have no investment in power or control over others. Their life is not about who I'm better than. See, true nobility is not about being better than somebody else. Everybody's better than somebody else at something and not as good as somebody else at something else. True nobility is about being better than you used to be. It's about growing in your life. That's what nobility is. And highly functioning people they're not looking into other people's lives. The last line of Candide, Voltaire's great novel, this whole story of this wanderer, Candide, this great teacher and sort of comic person. The last line, I guess we'll have to learn to cultivate our own garden. Cultivate your own garden. If other people want to grow rutabagas and you want to grow cabbage, then allow that and be independent of that. But so many people live their lives through what others are doing, how well they're doing it. Fully functioning people let go of that. They have incredibly high energy and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, entheos, the God within. When people say to me, what makes a great speaker? I said, be authentic and be enthusiastic. And it doesn't matter what your content is. People will love you if you're authentic and enthusiastic, if they can see the God within you. No concept of failure. There's no such thing. If you take a golf ball and you put it up on a tee and you stand there and you swing at the golf ball and it dribbles off to the side, you haven't failed. You've produced a result. The question is, what do you do with the results you produce? Everything that you do produces a result. You can call it failure and say, well, I'm not good at this, I've never been very athletic, and apply all kinds of labels to yourself. But we should never, ever allow ourselves to think of ourselves as failures, nor should we ever place that label on anybody else, because you can't fail. It's just a judgment. The only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment. It's just a judgment. And the difference between success and failure is just a judgment. You know, Edison, the great inventor, of course. You know, when asked the question, he had tried 25,000 different ways to invent a battery, and he still didn't have it. And finally someone said to him, how does it feel, someone of your stature, to have failed 25,000 times? He said, failed? I don't know anything about failing. He said, today I know 25,000 ways not to make a battery. What do you know? And every time you do something, every time you go, and it doesn't work, you learn something. And the question isn't whether you failed, it's what do I do with the results I produce? If you pick the golf ball up and put it back on there and say, all right, I'm going to correct that, and you do it again and again and again, eventually, if you go through the 4 pathways, if you practice the discipline and the wisdom and the unconditional love, eventually, when you surrender, you'll know how to hit a golf ball. But you'll never do it the moment you label yourself to be a failure. So those are some of the characteristics. There are others. Characteristics such as being inner-directed and welcoming the unknown, and so on. One of the great lessons I had to learn in my life was as a school teacher. And it also overlaps into being a parent. There was a Swiss psychiatrist whose name was Jean Piaget. And Piaget would teach a group of students, and this was the great lesson from Piaget. He would teach a group of students, he would present them with a lecture method, all of these, let's say they were teaching Spanish or chemistry or whatever. And they would present the lecture method, which is the way most of us discipline our children and talk to our children, through lecture. And then he would find at the end of the marking period, there would be what they call a normal bell-shaped curve of distribution. 68% approximately in the middle, C students, C plus, C minus. another 14% or 13.6% as B's, and 13.6% as D's, and then another 3 or 4% as A's. So you would have a distribution. There would be A's, B's, C's, D's, and those who didn't get anything, all right? And it would spell. Then he would take the same group of students, and instead of using a lecture method, they would use a visual method. They would just show pictures, and they would do it through drawings and so on. And then they found out at the end of the marking period that there was the same distribution, except that there were different people in the genius range, and different people in the didn't get anything out of it range, and a whole new group of B's and a whole new group of D's. Then they would take another method, and they would instruct them on, say, just using sounds, or just doing drawing, or any other method that they maybe just hands-on involvement or whatever. And they would have another distribution that would always be the same, but you'd have new people in the various categories. So that there's a genius in every single one of you. Everybody watching, everybody on this planet has a genius in them. You just have to know what method to use.